Hit. Hey everyone, so welcome back to the channel. After a lot of feedback that I received on my last video that I compared the 12.5 to the 14.5, we're gonna go ahead and do that retest again today. Before I go ahead and get out to the range, I wanna give some details that were asked of me in the comments, asking the comparison, all different types of stuff. So I'm gonna get into some of the details, and before I do that, I do wanna mention that I realize that this is not going to be a true apples to apples comparison. Different barrel manufacturing, different materials, all that type of stuff. I understand that can affect velocity. Let's get a little bit of a general overview and just, really at the end of the day, just for a little bit of fun. This isn't laboratory testing. If you want to see a really super accurate apples to apples comparison, go watch Goran Thumb's video where he took some Noveski builds, uppers, and all of those, I mean, they besides the barrel lengths, about as close as you could get to getting absolutely everything comparable. So again, I realize this is not that, but going into what I do have over here and what I'm going to be shooting is, let's go ahead and start off with this 18-incher up there. This is a Centurion Arms Mark 12 barrel. Heavy barrel profile, 1-in-7 twist with rifle gas, and the material is made out of 416R stainless steel. Next in line there is going to be my 16-inch. It is a Noveski N4 light. Don't be confused, it's not truly a light barrel. It's just light compared to their medium contour. It really is a little bit closer to government profile. They do move the weight of the barrel back to where the barrel meets the receiver. Makes it a little lighter handling, and they distribute the barrel diameter fore and aft of the gas journal a little more evenly. It makes it a little bit more better handling. So it is a 1-in-7 twist. It is a mid-length gas. It's made out of mil-spec M249 machine gun steel, whatever that is. It also has heavy M249 chrome lining and cold hammer forged. Next up, I'm getting to the 14.5. Now, this is a LMT L7D1 upper. So not a lot of information that I could find on this. From LMT's website, they do say that it is the common equivalent to the M4A1, though it does not have a government profile barrel. So I can't really elaborate more than that. Do know that it is 1-in-7 twist. It is carbine gas. It is made out of chrome moly steel, and not sure if it's chrome lined or what the deal is with that. Getting down to the 12.5 there. So this barrel, it is a Criterion, and it is the core series, so that's the profile that it is. It is a 1-in-8 twist carbine gas made out of 4150 chrome moly vanadium, and it is chrome lined. Getting here down to the 11.5. This is a Colt 6933 FBI HRT barrel. It is a heavy / SOCOM profile without the M203 cuts on there. It is a 1-in-7 twist carbine gas made out of 4150 chrome moly vanadium, and it is chrome lined. And then last but not least, with the ARs, the 10.3. This is a Daniel Defense Mark 18 government profile, 1-in-7 twist carbine gas, also made out of 4150 chrome moly vanadium, cold hammer forged, chrome line. So what are kind of going to be the redhead stepchildren and the outliers of this test are going to be my 13-inch Galil and my 16-inch Tavor SAR. So any of the information I could find out there, besides being 13 on the left and 16 on the right, both of them are made out of chrome line, cold hammer forged, chrome moly vanadium steel, and they both have a 1-in-7 twist. So kind of getting into next of what I'm going to be shooting as far as the ammo. I do have quite a bit of different sizes here, or different types. Starting off, I am going to be using, I'm going to say starting off for this video, I got the IMI Systems 77 grain open tip match, long range mod 1. I have some of the AAC 75 grain bow tail hollow point match. I have some Wolf Military Classic 62 grain soft point. Here I've got some good old, I think this was PMC M855 62 grain green tip. PMC X-Tax M193 55 grain. Also have the Winchester M193 55 grain. Some Tula 223 55 grain full metal jacket, and then some Wolf 223 55 grain full metal jacket. So these next two rounds, I believe these were reloads that I shot in my last video, but I can't say for sure. They have different head stamps and sealing on them. I can't remember what brand they are of reloads, but you see this one here, it's got the blue sealer on there, while as this one here has red sealer on there. Again, I do believe it is from the same manufacturer, and I believe that was coming from 2A Warehouse. No, that's not it. That's the brand of the case. But I know my son got it for me. Again, I don't know if it's the same stuff. I think it is, but I'm going to go ahead and shoot them separately anyway. I am going to shoot all of these through the different AR barrels. The one thing that I'm not going to be able to shoot, and I will also shoot them through the Galil Ace and the Tavor SAR, but I do have very limited amounts of this blue sealer Reman, and then also the M855. So won't be shooting that through the Galil or Tavor, but everything else I'll shoot through these barrel lengths from 10.3, 11.5, 12.5, 14.5, 16, and 18 for your enjoyment. So we'll follow back up at the range. All right, good morning. Here we are at the range, getting ready to start conducting our comparison velocities between different types of ammo from 10.3 going up to 18. I got the chronograph set up here at the range. Unfortunately for me, I forgot the pigtail for my iPhone. It'll allow me to use the app, but that's all right because the chronos at least is up and working. So let's go ahead and get started. First up, we're going to do this Wolf Full Metal Jacket 55 grain 223. 2551, 2589, 2554, 2588, 2614. Next up, 11.5 inch Wolf Full Metal Jacket 55 grain 223. 2673, 2666, 2679, 2679, 2638. All right, now we're getting to the 12.5. Same ammo, Wolf 55 grain, Full Metal Jacket 223. 2793, 2788, 2823, 2801, 2850. Moving up to the 14.5, Wolf 55 grain Full Metal Jacket 223. 2859, 2787, 2799, 2791, 2846. Moving up, 16-inch barrel, Wolf 55 grain Full Metal Jacket 223. 3035, 2990, 2990, 2922, 2942. Last up for the Wolf Full Metal Jacket 55 grain 223, 18-inch barrel. 2995, 3047, 3006, 3012, 2977. All right, next up is this Tula 223, 55 grain Full Metal Jacket, 10.3 inch barrel. 2581, 2682, 2646, 2617, 2635. 11.5-inch barrel, Tula 223, 55 grain full metal jacket. 2791, 2674, 2770, 2704, 2676. Next up, 12.5-inch Tula 223, 55 grain full metal jacket. 2852, 2873, 2809, 2846, 2869. All right, 14-inch Tula 223, 55 grain. 2838, 2874, 2857, 2858, 2890. All right, 16 inches, Tula 223, 55 grain full metal jacket. 2995, 2997, 2992, 2971, 2995. Last up for the Tula 223, 55 grain full metal jacket, 18-inch barrel. 2992, 3035, 3031, 3016, 2999. Okay, next up, we've got some of that remanufactured 55 grain 223 with the blue sealer, primer sealer. 2534, 2541, 2512, 2545, 2550. Next up, 11.5-inch remanufactured blue 55 grain 223. 2550, 2662, 2668, 2668, 2685. Next up, 12.5-inch shooting the remanufactured blue 55 grain 223. 2776, 2842, 2754, 2793, 2836. Next up, 14.5 shooting the remanufactured blue 55 grain 223. 2826, 2829, 2840, 2819, 2799. Next up, 16-inch shooting the remanufactured blue 55 grain full metal jacket. 2925, 2996, 2920. Lastly, got this 18-inch shooting the remanufactured blue 55 grain 223. 2981, 2985, 2970, 3034, 3012. Next up is this remanufactured red 55 grain 223, 10.3 inch barrel. 2446, 2685, 2658, 2409, 2412. All right, next up for the remanufactured red 55 grain full metal jacket, 11.5 inch barrel. 2440, 2452, 2487, 2500, 2503. Next up, 12.5 inch shooting the reman red 55 grain full metal jacket 223. 2562, 2903, 2583, 2910, 2561. Wow, very inconsistent. 14.5 inch remanufactured red 55 grain 223. 2891, 2622, 2623, 2613, 2618. Next up for the reman 55 grain red 223, 16 inch barrel. 2670, 2682, 2753, 2684, 2706. Last up for the remanufactured red 55 grain 223, 18 inch barrel. 2731, 3085, 3091, 2712, 2679. That may be the most inconsistent ammo I've ever shot. Next up, PMC X-Tac M193 55 grain full metal jacket, 10.3 inch barrel. 2708, 2752, 2719, 2719, 2723. 11.5 inch barrel shooting PMC X-Tac M193. 2768, 2805, 2901, 2918, 2864. Next up, 12.5 inch shooting the PMC X-Tac M193. 2942, 2917, 2950, 2921, 2920. Next up, 14.5 shooting the PMC X-Tac M193. 2884, 2933, 2897, 2909, 2906. 16-inch barrel, PMC X-Tech M193. 3102, 3102, 3112, 3050, 3088. Last up, 18 inches, shooting the PMC X-Tech M193. 3139, 3116, 3115, 3110, 3081. All right, next up, Winchester M193 out of a 10.3 inch barrel. 2752, 2744, 2765, 2735, 2713. Next up for the Winchester M193, 11.5 inch barrel. 2799, 2818, 2832, 2833, 2864. Next up for the Winchester M193, 12.5 inch barrel. 2961, 2971, 2997, 2988, 3016. Next up for the Winchester M193, 14.5 inch barrel. 2978, 2978, 2982, 3010, 3012. All right, next up, Winchester M193, coming out of the 16-inch barrel. 3117, 3117, 3072, 3125, 3125. Lastly, for the Winchester M193, 18-inch barrel. 3176, 3130, 3130, 3178, 3157. All right, next up is some PMC X-Tech M855. I'm only shooting it through the 12.5 and 14.5 because I didn't have enough to run it through all of them. 2858, 2862, 2824, 2894, 2875. All right, now for the PMC X-Tech M855, 14.5 inch barrel. 2882, 2891, 2868, 2868, 2868. 12.5-inch barrel, Wolf 62 grain soft point. 2704, 2724, 2714, 2737, 2741. Next up, for the Wolf 223 62 grain soft point, 14.5-inch barrel. 2722, 2717, 2731, 2691, 2765. All right, so moving on to some of the heavier stuff. This is the AAC 75 grain boat tail hollow point match 556, 10.3-inch barrel. 2391, 2391, 2411, 2368, 2368. Now for the AAC 75 grain boat tail hollow point match, 11.5-inch barrel. 2501, 2524, 2471, 2534. Next up, for the AAC 556 75 grain boat tail hollow point, 12.5-inch barrel. 2612, 2583, 2560, 2565, 2568. Next up, for the AAC 75 grain boat tail hollow point, 14.5-inch barrel. 2648, 2740, 2629, 2695, 2661. Next up, for the AAC tail hollow point 75 grain 16-inch barrel. 2773, 2773, 2775, 2700, 2702. For the AAC 75 grain boat tail hollow point 18-inch barrel. 2711, 2718, 2758, 2709, 2767. Last up, the IMI 556 77 grain open tip match, 10.3-inch barrel. 2380, 2461, 2455, 2448, 2395. Pretty slow. 11.5-inch barrel. 2490, 2490, 2490, 2486, 2532. 12.5-inch barrel. 2563, 2593, 2529, 2610, 2547. 14.5-inch barrel. 2660, 2672, 2618, 2648, 2620. Next up for the IMI 77 grain open tip match, 16-inch barrel. 2852, 2686, 2738, 2679, 2740. All right, last up for the IMI 77 grain open tip match, 18-inch barrel. 2705, 2720, 2726, 2726, 2779. So that wraps up all of the ARs. Running the different types of ammo, going from 10.3 to 18. Let's go on ahead and shoot the Gavor SAR 16-inch barrel. All right, so I got a 40 round mag loaded up, 8 different types of ammo, 5 rounds apiece. First up is Tula 55 grain, 2895, 2892, 2899, 2945, 2883. Next up is Wolf 55 grain full metal jacket, 2902, 2858, 2863, 2862, 2912. Next 5 is the remanufactured red sealer 55 grain, 3018, 3004, 3006, 3102, 3110. All right, next up is PMC X-Tac M193, 3039, 3051, 2998, 2991, 2994. Next 5 is the Winchester M193, 3115, 3137, 3059, 3050, 3099. Next up is the Wolf 62 grain soft point, 2829, 2861, 2766, 2813, 2816. Now AAC 75 grain, 2732, 2741, 2717, 2678, 2687. So last 5 IMI 77 grain open tip match, 2642, 2738, 2709, 2697, 2691. All right, now that I'm home from the range and have had time to sit down and document the data and kind of look it over a little bit, I'm ready to share the findings that I have with my guns that I've shot along with the ammo that I shot through them. While I'm going to be scrolling on the page here, I also will include some screenshots of the data But anybody who's interested in seeing it, you can feel free to email me at regulardudegunreviews@gmail.com, and I will happily send these spreadsheets out to you. So first off, I'm going to get started with some of the points I saw with the comparing the 12.5 and the 14.5, because that's what this video started with. So to start off, I'm going to review and talk about the 12.5 versus 14.5 data, since this is what this video came out of, being my last one, the short little clip with the my 12.5, 14.5 velocity data, which I got quite a bit of feedback on. And then I'll move on to some of the other rifles. Between the 10 different loads that I shot between the 12.5 and 14.5, I will say the remanufactured stuff I had, especially the stuff with the red sealer, was horribly inconsistent. I wouldn't even really look at this data here because it was just all over the dang place. The remanufactured blue seal, that stuff was a little more consistent, but I think that overall, a lot of people are going to get more or be more interested in stuff like M193, the 77 grain open tip match by IMI, and then possibly also some of the M855. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time there. But overall, I stand by what I originally stated, and that is that the 12.5 and 14.5 are so very, very close that if you're willing to do a pistol or an SBR, in my opinion, dropping 2 inches down is worth it. It makes it a lot more handy and compact. That is one of the things that I value, or the things that I want in a rifle. I like to go the shortest I can possible, and still maintain some velocity. So, overall, I mostly saw single digits, some lower double digits when you compare the 12.5 to the 14.5, at least when you're talking about 55 grain to 62 grain. So with the Wolf 55 grain full metal jacket, there was only a 5 feet per second advantage to the 14.5. With the Tula 55 grain full metal jacket, there was a 13 foot per second advantage to the 14.5. With the PMC X-Tech M193, the edge actually went to the 12.5, where it was 24 feet per second faster. But then moving to Winchester M193, the edge went back to the 14.5, but just by 5 feet per second. With the PMC M855, 12 feet per second faster in the 14.5. And then with the Wolf 62 grain soft point, that was only 1 foot per second, with the edge going to the 14.5. Now, with the two heavier loads I shot, this is when you really start to see a bit of a difference with the 14.5 and the 12.5, being that the 14.5 really kind of outshined the 12.5. The AAC 75 grain, that was 97 feet per second faster in the 14.5, and the IMI 77 grain open tip, that was 62 feet per second faster in the 14.5. And again, like I stated at the beginning of this video, I realize that this isn't the gospel. This isn't set in stone. There are several different variables between different barrel manufacturers, gas systems, etc. This is just one more data point added to what you can find out there in the interwebs and in the gun forums. And like I mentioned, I mean, you want to see something that's really apples to apples comparison. I feel that the Grand Thumb video that he posted a few months back with Noveske barrels was probably about as good as you can get comparatively wise. In a little bit in the video, a little later in the video, when I talk about, I think that'll highlight that point when I compare the Tavor 16-inch barrel with the Noveske N4 Lite that I have in my AR barrel, which is 16 inches also. Saw quite a bit of difference there. But if all you were looking to get was see the comparison between the 12.5 and the 14.5, you can go ahead and click off the video now. But I do want to dive a bit deeper into these other barrel lengths, because a lot of interesting information that I found. Really kind of surprised with some of the results, at least based on chatter that I'd heard on the interwebs and the forums and whatnot. Kind of looking at these charts, just a quick little run through. You see the brand of ammo that it is. You see the different barrel lengths going across over here, along with the 5-shot feet per second readings, and then their average. And then down below is going to be the increase over the previous size barrel length. So you see here, 86 foot per second with the 11.5 faster over the 10.3, and the 12.5 was 119 feet per second over the 11.5, etc., etc. So see up here, you can get, we have the PMCX TAC, and then our M193 in the Winchester M193. So again, I'll put some pictures, some screen grabs up here during the video as I talk through this. And again, if anybody would like to see this data in person, I'll happily email it to you if you want to reach out to me and request it. Hit me up at regulardudegunreviews@gmail.com. So like I mentioned, difference between 12.5 and 14.5 with the lower weight stuff, 55 and 62, very, very similar results, but it's, you know, with the 14.5, shooting heavier stuff, 75 grain or 770 grain, that's where the 14.5 really pulls ahead of the 12.5. But what else I found to be very interesting was the jumps between the different barrel lengths. And I know Grantham pointed that out in his video. I don't remember off the top of my head what jumps they were between each barrel, but with my data, or with what I shot in my guns and the ammo, I saw the largest jumps between going from 11.5 to 12.5, and then again at 14.5 and 16. I was also really surprised about the really small jump that you get going from 16 to 18 inches, especially since you saw really big jumps going from 16 or 14.5 to 16 here. You know, at 1.5 inch difference. I mean, look at that, 185 with the 16, or I'm sorry, the M193 X-Tac, 119 jump with the Winchester M193. Let's go ahead and look at some of the data for the other brands. So you see here with Wolf 55 grain going from a 16 to a 14.5, 160 feet per second. The remanufactured Blue Seal steel stuff was 124 feet per second. Coming down here, again, I wouldn't even look at this data. Those rounds are absolutely garbage. Tula, 127 foot per second jump, going from a 14.5 to 16, 185, like I mentioned, with the PMCX TAC. So just going an inch and a half from 14.5 to 16 gave really, really big jumps. But then you look at the data for going from 16 to 18, only 35 foot per second with the Wolf 55 grain, only 51 feet per second with the remanufactured stuff, 25 feet per second with Tula 55 grain, 21 with PMC M193, 43 with Winchester M193. You know, we just kind of comparatively going from a 14.5 to a 16 only being an inch and a half, you would think that going from 16 to 18 with that 2-inch difference, you would see really big jumps. But apparently that wasn't exactly the case, not at least with my guns and the ammo that I was shooting. Another thing that I was really surprised about was the difference going from a 10.3 to 11.5. I think most people know that 10.3 is really about as short as you want to go to get acceptable effects on target with 5.56 rounds. You get, you know, anything slower than that, you're really kind of pushing the point where it's not going to fragment anymore. But I hear all the time about how good 11.5 inch is over 10.3, and not to scoff at 91 feet per second, you know, 88 feet per second, 111 feet per second, and let's see what else, 87, 86. That's nothing to scoff at. That is definitely a decent jump in velocity. It's not quite as much, at least in my guns. And I've also heard that a lot of people saying that 11.5 and 12.5 are about the same. And again, you know, like I mentioned, that's where I saw some of the biggest jumps in velocity. So at least, again, from my guns and ammo, 11.5 and 12.5 do not equal the same. Really big jumps going from 11.5 to 12.5. They're 127 feet per second, 119, 158 with the Winchester M193. So that was pretty interesting to me. Another interesting point was with, you get to the heavier grain stuff. So the AAC 75 grain Botel hollow point match and the IMI 77 grain open tip match long range mod 1. You don't see the biggest jumps, with the exception of this AAC 75 grain. You do see a big jump from 10.3 to 11.5, but you don't see quite of a big jump with the IMI 77 grain open tip match. different numbers for sure, but you'll notice in both sets of data that you don't really you don't see big jumps going from one barrel length to the next. I mean, it's a little bit flat. You do see a little bit of a bigger jump going from 11 and a half to 12 and a half, or depending with the IMI, and then maybe from the going from 12 and a half to 14 and a half. But you notice here that even in my gun, my 18 inch with the Centurion Mark 18 barrel, it was actually 12 feet per second slower shooting this AAC 75 grain compared to the 16 inch. So, I don't know what that is. I mean, obviously physics plays in the part here, but as far as why you don't see such accelerated jumps, maybe that barrel length, I'm sorry, the bullet weight, along with the amount of propellant that you can get, you're kind of, you're pushing it with the capabilities, and you're just not going to see those big steps. I don't know. I'm sure other people who are way more into ballistics can explain that a lot better than I would be able to. But again, interesting data point. Some other key takeaways from this testing that I did, at least for me, was really knowing what your gun should be capable of and what load that you're putting in that is going to limit the capability. So, well, 77 grain open tip match is pretty well known to be the much better, more effective range than something like M193 and AIM-855. That one of the key characteristics with 5.56 being as lethal or effective as it is that it will yaw on soft tissue and then usually break on the cannula and fragment into several pieces. So um, to do that, you have to have velocity. And at least according to Fackler's data, 2,700 feet per second is about the limit, as slow as you can go for reliable fragmentation, though it can get as low as 2,500 feet per second when you're using M193. So, looking at the PMCX TAC, looking at the Winchester, I mean, you see here the Mark 18, the muzzle velocity at 2725. You're already coming out of the gun. You're already at like the most reliable fragmentation feet per second. So obviously, the further you go out, I mean, every 50 yards, you're losing feet per second. That's why I think a lot of people say that, the Mark 18 is really 100 yards or less gun. Now, all of this being said, I get it that bullet placement or shot placement is absolutely everything. Definitely plenty of dead people on the ground from 22 long rifle. I definitely would not like to get hit with any of these rounds. Again, just kind of speaking of some published data out there and just some points. The M193 out of the 10.3, you're really pushing those limits. The Winchester, same thing, 27.42 at muzzle velocity out of a Mark 18 10.3 inch barrel. You're towards the bottom end of that reliable fragmentation. Going up to an 11 and a half really helps with that. At least gets you over 100 feet per second above that, depending on which round you're looking at for as far as M193. And getting up to 12 and a half, you're really pushing it as far as like now you're getting some really good velocity. 2930 with the PMCX TAC, 2987 with the Winchester M193, and then of course going up from there, you're getting a lot better velocity out of there, where your effects on target are going to be much higher. Now, when it comes to the heavier weight bullets, I don't know for certain if the 75 grain AAC stuff is similar, but I know that the 77 grain open tip match, or at least Mark 262 ammo, besides it being more accurate out of all barrel lengths, it does have a much lower threshold for reliable fragmentation with those heavier rounds. And that's down further towards 1,900 feet per second. So really big difference between the 2,700 feet per second reliability of 193. That's what makes it so much effective coming out of shorter barrels, or why they say it's a little bit better. You see some of these really low numbers coming out of the 10.3 inch barrel, even the going all the way up to you could say 16 inches if you're looking at M193 comparison data. But being that it's 1,900 feet per second, even coming out of the little shorty 10.3 inch barrel, it's coming at 2428. So you have several hundred feet per second that you can rely on to get that reliable fragmentation out of the 77 grain type stuff. And from what I understand, why that is because the hollow cavity in the front of it, when the bullet yaws, it breaks at that hollow point cavity and then fragments really, really well. So I would say that overall, you any barrel length you have, 77 grain open tip match is going to be the best round to get, but it is also very expensive. You're talking about $1.25 to $1.50 per round, even out of IMI 77 grain open tip match. If you're looking at the Black Hills Mark 262, it's going to be even more than that. But some of the downsides, well, this stuff is not as easy to find. Sure, you can order it online in multiple places, but as far as being able to just walk into your local sporting goods stores, there's not going to be real big quantities of it. And I think the majority of people and shooters out there are going to stockpile something like Winchester M193 or PMC, any type of M193. It's probably going to be definitely the most widely used rounds that people are going to stockpile on. Of course, if you're looking at something that's going to be more hunting or self-defense oriented, something like the Spear Gold Dot 62 grain stuff, soft points, that will mushroom and flatten out, I'm sure, at slower velocities, or it's going to be less sensitive to having greater effects on target than what you're going to get with M193. But again, that stuff is also hard to find. I bought a whole bunch of that Spear Gold Dot 62 grain soft point a couple years back, and I have never been able to find it again. Seems to go, I don't know if they just like never restock. I don't look all the time, but at least every couple of months I'll go start searching around for it. So in the meantime, I've really kind of started stockpiling more so up on this IMI 77 grain open tip match. So again, if like the masses, if you have M193 and that's what you're going to use to stockpile, well, I mean, stockpile any ammo that you can possibly get, but know your limitations depending on the barrel length that you have if you want that reliable fragmentation. Again, I know shot placement is 100% everything. So okay, so now to talk a little bit about my Tavor SAR and my Galil Ace with a 13-inch barrel. I did end up shooting them. Not all of the data for the Galil is going to be complete because I got a bit sidetracked with adjusting the KNS piston in it that I've had for 2 years and never messed with, and then it suddenly dawned on me that I wanted to go ahead and adjust it. So I only had a limited amount of ammo with me, so I ended up using that to get that adjusted. But just for data sake, as you see here, if you were to compare the 13-inch Galil barrel to the closest barrel in an AR that I had, which would be the 12.5-inch my Criterion Core, out of the Galil shooting Tula 5.56, it was 17 feet per second faster out of the Galil than it was the 12.5, and with the Wolf 55 grain, it was 5 feet per second faster. But moving on to the Tavor, because a little bit more information in there. I did shoot the 8 different types of ammo. Again, disregard this remanufactured red Sealer 55 grain because it was just absolute garbage. So, people brought up some good points in my last video, and they mentioned, not all things being equal, especially when it comes to the barrels. And I did see that at least in the 2 samples that I had, which in this case being the 16-inch barrel my SAR, and then also the Noveske N4 Lite that I have in my 16-inch. So same barrel lengths, different manufacturers, also different gas systems in there. Obviously, the Tavor SAR is not direct impingement; it's a long stroke piston. But looking at them with every round that I shot, whether it be the Tula 55 grain, the Wolf, the PMC M193, the Winchester M193, it was slower out of the SAR than every round was slower out of the SAR than it was the Noveske N4 Lite. You see here, the Tula was 87 feet per second slower. The Wolf was 97. The PMC M193 was 72. Winchester M193 was 19 feet per second slower. Wolf 62 grain soft point, 80 feet per second slower. And then also, getting into the heavier stuff, with the exception of the IMI, it was still slower, but just not by much. You see there, just 4 feet per second. So again, that just goes to show that not all barrels are created equal for sure. So if you take a criterion versus a centurion versus the faxon, et cetera, they may not necessarily be exactly the same. But that's about all I got. That wraps up this video. Hopefully it was informational and at least entertaining for you guys. I know it was a lot of fun for me to do myself. So appreciate all the comments and the feedback that I've gotten. Really appreciate all of the new viewers and along with my returning viewers. I really appreciate this. Again, as usual, I'm just a regular dude with a regular job that just does this stuff kind of for fun. So appreciate all the love and feedback that I've been getting from you guys on YouTube. So see you in the next one.